you. Welcome back. Who knows?
I have some questions on spiritual traditions. Is this teaching for or against any traditions?
Well, it's for all traditions that are here to actually help, firstly by recognizing where the individual is. If a tradition has speaks who can do that, and they're offering the individual a great service and recognizing the individual for where the individual is. It may not even know where the individual is itself. So recognizing where the individual is, more so than by experience or culturing, but knowing where the individual is on the spiritual path is important. Tradition that serves that purpose, absolutely for, regardless of what the teachings are, which is a separate issue. Recognize who's there so that they can receive what they need to receive in order to most effectively commence their practice and accomplish what their purpose is there.
Is this teaching intended to establish a new tradition?
No intentions to establish a new tradition, but a realization is a realization. Okay? And that is what it is, and whatever comes with that comes with that. There's no intention whatsoever. Let us say there's an intention-less, motivation-less realization. And as that realization breathes its light, sound into this dimension, which is its function, if it's a true realization, then spontaneity and creativity are part and parcel of its process because it's breathing. It's creative intelligence. Whatever comes with that is what comes with that. But there's no intention for any particular kind of machinery. So, if that comes because it comes, not because there's intention behind it. Realization is one thing. Now, realization in the traditions serves the purpose of keeping the tradition going. This is not that kind of a process. This is what it is. As others enter their practice and mature into selfless training, heart opening, mind opening, body opening, recognition and realization, then if realization occurs, then that's what happens with that. Okay? In that sense, this is a tradition, right, of realization, by way of realization, because of realization, for realization, right? But it's not a tradition that keeps itself going as a tradition as such. Tradition for tradition's sake is one thing. Realization for realization's sake is another thing. If both are related together as one thing, so be it. Could be good. So, further, the tradition is one thing. Then the humans operating it is another thing. Like a textbook is one thing. And those who are managing it and telling you to live according to this, that, whatever relative to the textbook or textbooks, right? That's a whole other thing. So people who are on the path should determine how much is being put on them that doesn't pertain to them, or how much they are taking on because they trust whoever it is, because they are in a position of authority. So then you have to sort of like take whatever it is, even if it's like a truckload of books in some cases that you have to study before you get to knock on the door. Who's to say that that's really necessary for everyone? So, and so the same light is shed on so-called initiations that could be preliminary measures taken to determine a person's discipline or level of participation in any particular process of, say, traditional requirements for you to prove yourself in terms of what you can learn, what you can't learn, what you should learn, according to who. See?
Are certain traditions recommended?
Traditions that recognize the individual properly, that enable a person to undergo a process that is guilt-free, egoless, guilt-free. So say, you're here if you're here, if you're not here, you're not here. You're great if you're here, you're great if you're not here. The world is not going to be better off if you're here or not here. So, we get away from all these trips, then everything is perfect. And peeps have the freedom and the respect and the dignity to go where they need to go. Peeps are here, great, fantastic. They can do what we do here, which is nothing relative to other peeps. Maybe it's too much relative to other peeps. So, here the attention in terms of hero realization is much more in terms of what you are manifesting in terms of your sound, your music, your expression as you feel. So feeling is important, sound is part of that, and how that shows up in your life in terms of serving you or obstructing you in some way, depending on your programming. And it's the same with traditions and their programming. See, because they have programs, right? Study programs, so it's hierarchical programs that people have to go through and endure and then experience, enjoy, or suffer, depending. Yeah? And some traditions are not suitable for other peeps. So some are perfectly suitable for certain peeps. Certain academics can only go so far in a tradition. So certain academic traditions can only take you so far in terms of your psychic or real spiritual possibilities. So, and if you don't have the guidance, in some cases the guidance, ongoing, continual guidance of a certain kind of teacher or spiritual master, you're not going to make certain kind of progress. If you're with not so advanced peeps, you're only going to make so much progress. See? So it becomes more complicated the more peeps you have involved in a situation that you don't really have oversight over. You're letting people interpret what's happening and carry on in their own manner, then you have to take what comes with that. So, not that it's a problem, but that's one way of doing it. And for no tradition, this is what I'm saying, if a tradition can understand and acknowledge the fact that beings can, because of their former karma, be experiencing unfoldment and spiritual initiations by way of crisis, by way of some kind of process that is determined already and obviously moving a person in a certain direction. Obviously, when it's obvious to peeps who are around the person, it's obvious to the person, it's obvious in what they're doing, that they are part of the process and they are unfolding according to or parallel to certain traditions without that person being in a tradition in this lifetime, whereas they may have been in the tradition many lifetimes before and still working off of that. And it's then up to the tradition to be able to tolerate the possibility that people can attain the same kind of realization, but not necessarily under the most specific concrete conditions, but who have psychic development by virtue of their karma, psychically developed from former lifetimes or from practice at the moment or from the brilliance of their intelligence. It might make them jump levels in a minute, jump levels, whereas others, they have to stay on a certain level for years, doing all the things that the tradition requires them to the letter, to the T, but not making much more progress. So again, level of intelligence, level of individual unfoldment has more to do with it than just the tradition you're in, although the tradition is a school. Schools are good. They're good starting points. You can end up there, you can become a teacher of a school, no problem. But then you can become a teacher of no school, which is also no problem.
What is the ultimate purpose of a spiritual tradition?
Training. To bring you into the field of training where you feel that it's comfortable and natural for you to be doing such a thing, whatever the discipline is. Training your body, which is great. You're in an environment that is conducive to that, so you don't have the resistance, you don't have the conflict or the chaos or the turbulence of other people who are different and feel you're being too different, and that what are you doing after all? It's crazy, no one else is into that. Why are you doing that kind of trip? So, where they don't understand, lack of understanding or difference of understanding, different rate of vibration and so on, different level of practice, different level of consciousness. All of these things factor into it, not only in terms of music, but in terms of everything you do. See? So then it's not what you're doing, but who's doing what at what level. So, and if you're judging a person, erroneously judging a person because you knew them before, earlier, so you had a certain level of karma that you caused to come up because you were there. It has nothing to do with the person really, beyond the fact that what you bring is karma to whoever the peeps are, and what you share with them may not be who they are or what they are at all. And so this has to do then with the individual being more than your personal experience of the individual. How do you read such an individual? So this is what requires delicate consideration. So as a person comes, male, female, you see the body, you see them write something, still don't know them. So in some cases, the teacher will have a dream about them and know more about them from the dream, beyond what they write, beyond what they smell like, or look like, or dress like, or talk like. So because it's not the shell that you're subjecting to training, but it's the inner, it's the psychic levels, psychic componentry that is subject to this, because it's from the inside out, not from the outside in. So getting back to the environment, yes, the environment is very important. And that's what the schools offer peeps, for those who need that. For those who have the machinery turned down already, then it doesn't matter what the environment is, because they're working from the inside out. They don't need the outside to reflect the inside. They don't need the outside to tell them that they have an inside at all, because they're already operating from that, psychically developed, psychically attuned, psychically accessing the deeper already. Peeps are not able to get that far on the path by way of their families. So they might need a change of environment, because the environments that they're used to are too reactive. And they are thus reacting to a reactive environment that doesn't understand their difference, their rate of vibration. And so an environment, in some cases, is definitely helpful and useful. So the school, in terms of an environment, in terms of a situation, psychic situation, an openness so that peeps can start to relax, unfold, deal with their inner phenomena as such, right? Their psychic sensitivity with a spirit of goodness and happiness and appreciation that we are psychic beings. So it's not a weird thing, it's not strange, and you have to get self-conscious or defensive about it. We're not competing with each other here, who has the best trips, the greatest experiences or whatever, who would appear to be the most advanced. Maybe the most advanced has no trips, no experiences, doesn't know a thing. It might be the guru. Say, hey, you the guru? Here. They tell me. Well, what do you know? I don't know what I know. I'm just the guru. Am I supposed to know something more than that? Right? So this is the issue. When we're talking about programming, it's what level of programming? Relative traditions? Yes, they can be perfect for certain people. Perfect. Like an academy can be perfect for a certain person. Conservatory can be perfect for another person. And then just life experience can be just as perfect for another person. Just like a hardship, an accident, can all serve as some form of medicine or awakening for the individual. Shocking them in some cases, and just comforting them in a psychic sense. Saying, okay, now it's time for you to grow. Now it's time for you to open up to who you really are, apart from your appearance, apart from your imagination, apart from your conditioning, apart from your family impressions and imaging. So now you can wake up beyond that, so you can find out what your real purpose or mission is.
In an earlier talk, you mentioned that this process is for the individual and not about others. Is this a criticism of certain traditions, namely the yogic traditions?
It may be a criticism in the light of what is being said. There's such a tradition in terms of, well, you're not supposed to enter heaven yourself before others. You have to help others first. I think that's a program. Because if you do take care of your business first, right? That is to say, if you unfold to the degree of understanding, and you have a realization, then you can help others from a whole different level. So, then you're helping others without helping others. Instead of designing your life to be deliberately, mechanically, strategically helping others because that's part of your your program. So you're busy self-consciously helping others because you have to, because you won't be enlightened unless you do that. It's not necessarily true. None of that is true. Then enlightenment is part of a machinery, a logical sequence. And that might not be what enlightenment, in fact, has to say about it. Enlightenment has its own voice in the matter. Okay? Whatever it is. There's a difference here. Maybe a slight difference. The goal is the same. Okay? Heartful communication between beings. Right? One is deliberately oriented towards others, which means it's self-focused. Other, self. Who? Right? Other. I think that's a problem. That's the second chakra level of association, even if the heart is kind of like, whoa, huge, open, still that. Self, other. Me, you. Unenlightenment, enlightenment. So if we can get way ahead of that, say that there's nothing now. Get clear, stop, hear, listen, burn, wake up, right? Stop, drop out, again stop, check out what you're doing, know that what you're doing is not necessary, just rest momentarily, stop again, look, hear, stop, keep stopping, pulling yourself back to stopping and being present, okay? Be present, be in the moment, and so on. From that place, once you start unloading your baggage and all your mechanisms about others, because of yourself, because you're not enlightened, and the only way to get enlightened is to enlighten others, which is mechanically true, in a sense, useful at least, but not absolutely true. Who knows that? Look at the school system, for an example, right? Who, because they're teaching everybody else, is better than who they're teaching? Who, because they're graduating everybody, is graduating themselves? It doesn't necessarily jive that way. So, it doesn't jive that way. Immediate realization is what is important. From there, without your ego, you're going to be selfless, which means others, outside of the concept of others, are being taken care of. Because you're being what you need to be relative to life. That includes everything. So there's a difference there, maybe. And so this is why it's good to speak about these things, so that a subtle difference like that can be appreciated. Not that that's a wrong thing to do, or that it's bad. It's not good, bad, wrong, or whatever. It's a way of doing things that works for certain people. Certain people have to put others first like that as a strategy. Right? Whether you call it the Bodhisattva path or whatever you want to call it what you want. We have here the Shabda, Agni Shabda Sattva, right, the being, or fire sound. It's not interested in the concept of others because it shouldn't be interested in itself to have the other there. It's not about self as other or other as self. Psh, zero. Forget about it. Luxuriating in that. Forget about it. From that realization, if you can get to the core realization of no one home, nothing to do, right? Time to waste, life to waste, so you can sit and be and fully realize what that moment is, completely, fully conscious of what it is, and work from that, feel okay with that. Everyone gets taken care of, because then you are operating at a maximal level of radiance, realization. Everyone benefits from that. But you don't have a whole bunch of peeps going on strategically as missionaries or whatever to help other peeps while they're studying their books. Right? Because they have to help other peeps. Are you helping other peeps? You seem to be, but are you helping other peeps? Is helping other peeps really helping other peeps? Is talking to other peeps really teaching them anything? See? Is it undoing anything? So that's the question here. See? It's just a question as far as that goes. Here, heart fire, sound, realization, or heart ear realization brings you right back to zero, ultimate emptiness or transcendence, silence. And from there you're able to know, not think, not other, not self, just bam, act. And it's correct, perfect, You feel it, you know it, it's in the flow. Next question.
Do ancient traditions have relevance in a modern world?
Of course they do. Some do and some don't. Depends. So if we're talking about an ancient tradition, then there may be some wisdom there. And that's what the individual has to determine. What of that wisdom works for you? See? If you take an ancient Taoist idea like, well, those who know don't tell, those who tell don't know. That might work today. That might mean shut your mouth and do what you have to do, right? And then it might be all wrong. And because you know it for what it is, you might say, man, there's something there. It's true. All right? Those who know don't tell, because there's nothing to say. You know. No doubt about that. So those who know it, do it, so they don't have to talk about it and rattle their mouths about it necessarily. Yes, that's true. Then what's a master do? He knows and he tells you about it. So there you have knowing that's speaking to you. And then, since it's knowing speaking to you, then it's knowing that is saying nothing. It's not telling you anything. Knowing is speaking to you. So no one's telling you anything. Okay? So there are different levels to this that peeps can take from the ancients that they can use in the present. Huh? So again, the individual has to perceive what in them is relative to the timeless, which is then ancient wisdom, ancient school. Timelessness, true wisdom, profound, timeless wisdom. Right? Then they use that. They come to terms with it. Again, it's a school, which means it's a step. But nobody is that. And that's a step. Okay? But nobody is that. Okay? Ultimately, nobody needs that. Because everybody already is that at some level or other. So the tradition is human nature operating at a certain level of consciousness. That's what a tradition is. Then when you have a realization, then you're free to operate at an entirely different level of consciousness that could be in line with or in accord with traditions, or it could be against the traditions, depending on what the dogmas are. And that's why you have so many sects. So many different versions of teachings. Right? And then a teacher who has a realization has a right to bring his own spin to the situation. Because a realization will make that spin clearer to the individual who has a realization. It's not a problem. It's not like an argument. It's just the realization for the individual. So, oh yes, well this was said there, so it is, and then it is not, but then he has something else to say. Well, there may not be an is or an is not that is or is not. There may be an is or is not that not only is or is not, but also ultimately is or is not. Whatever the is not is or is not. So to speak.
Yes.
Right? And then you carry on from there, which we don't have time to do yet. Go on.
Do the people who manage or maintain a tradition benefit from it in the same way as other participants?
If you are talking about peeps who are staff members of organizations, well, they may not. You see, but on the other hand, you have an issue here. They can be told, well, this is your practice here. You take care of the business side of the organization or spiritual teaching or the music institution or whatever it might be, right? Education, no system. And so, well, that is your practice. That's your service. You get paid to do that in some cases. And so it's possible that while they are doing that service, depending, of course, on the individual, they may be losing out because they're gaining good karma and economic relief from their services. They may not be exactly benefiting from specific practices. It's not in all cases that's the issue or even true, but in some cases that is the case. Definitely. Okay? People say, oh, I've been in this organization for 20 years, but I never took a seminar. I never had a certain kind of contact with the teacher or something. Right? I was never worked on. So I was just taking care of the business. And then they told me, well, that was the right thing to do because that was helping everybody else, but then here I am feeling left out. supporting but feeling left out. Well, if you feel that's a problem, then it's your choice to choose right then and there to change that particular course of action, not hold the organization responsible for something which you feel is strongly an issue for you. Then you see peeps about it, turn it around, because then it may not be the organization's fault beyond the point. If you keep it to yourself, it might be your problem. But if you bring it up and say, yeah, I need to change, or I demand a change because I need to practice in this way or other, which could be your way. And it's up to the organization to see, it'll know you well enough, or be advanced enough, say, and be free enough and intelligent enough or creative enough to let you change. And say, well, maybe that's true. Yeah, you know, you bringing that up, that's perfectly correct for you. Yeah, let's take you out of this job, get someone else for this job, and get you in training. Put you in this more accelerated path of practice. See? And so this is an issue for a lot of the peeps who are out there. See? Whether to practice in one form or other is the question. But if the organization is on its toes, then it will know. And if it's watching after its peeps, keeping up with its peeps, then they're going to send people out to watch the peeps to see who's needing training, who's ready for it, and who may be doing a great job and loving their job, but then we recognize they need to train. Say, wow, this is the best staffer we have here, who's doing a brilliant job, but it's time for them to train now. See? And they may say, I don't want to I want to keep this going, because I'm helping the organization here, but then that's all you're doing. See? But you're here also to train, but it shouldn't be coerced. It should be a negotiable situation between the peeps. Right? So the organization then has to have this kind of creative intelligence going on that enables it to manage the needs of peeps from a spiritual and a creative level to make things work for everybody. That doesn't usually happen in the real world. Next question.
Is self-sacrifice in service to a tradition appropriate, and if so, how much is enough?
That's an individual determination. It would be ideal if you were in a situation where it could be said for you, right? Where you had an opportunity to sit with peeps to determine where you were at in terms of your practice. As an individual matter, you have to feel where you are and what you need, and if you're ready to accelerate that. And if what you're doing is enabling you to keep the world karma in balance, being free and happy to go out there and do what you have to do in terms of your world service, your presence in the world. Whether it's a street cleaner or the doctor, same presence, same sacredness of function, no difference, really. It's your attitude that brings sculptures or grace to the situation. Humble master can do anything. Clean the streets, right? And whisper wisdom in your ear. You won't even know what happened. It might even disappear after that, but it can take that form. Because all levels of consciousness need the illumination. All levels of consciousness from the lowest on up to the highest need this kind of wisdom, intelligence influx, so that their heart is expanded, their mind is expanded, and there's more radiance everywhere, more grace waves. See? So it's not about all educated peeps doing it and keeping it only at an educated level. That's nonsense. Nonsense. It's nonsense, and it's only for the elites. That's nonsense. All the peeps need it. Kids need it. Street people need it. How are the street people going to get it? All right? So it's only for what? The educated, the academics, monastics? It's nonsense. It's elitism. It's good, it works, but the basic people need it. The story of some masters got off their high horse and went out there, went to the people, sat with the people, talked to the basic people. And so that's important. Bring it to the people. Don't expect them to climb up your mountain and get there. So you have to bring it to them. So Zen image, right? Coming back to the marketplace. Once you get the bull, come back the ox, right? Bring the ox back to the marketplace. Right, exactly. That's what it's about, in some way or other. So we're doing teachings here, can get out to the marketplace, no problem, or to the place, wherever. If you want to do that, make your books available, not a bad thing. Make your products available, but then it's good to have peeps go out there too. Go into the communities, let us say, and meet the peeps. Prisons even, right? Asylums. All of these are real places to bring your wisdom to. So peeps there need it. Might take just one meeting with somebody and they recover. Right? As soon as they see you, they might recover. So, oh my goodness. Wow, I thought I was in one state, then I saw this person, now I'm in another state, I'm ready to get out of here. So,
How does one distinguish between appropriate self-sacrifice and exploitation?
well, if you have a sense of dignity, then you know exactly what it is. You have a sense of self-respect, of course you know what self-sacrifice is, that is appropriate for you, and then exploitation, if there is such a thing for you. So, because for some people, any self-sacrifice is exploitation. So, and for others, self-exploitation is the kind of sacrifice they want to make. So, don't mind at all. With me, I'm cool. I need that lesson right now. No problem. So, it's on the individual. And that's why peeps have to be monitored carefully. That's why it's good to get information out to peeps relative to institutional hustling, right? Politicalizing their program. Making it seem like, well, you have to take this because this is the superior path, see? Once you get into this kind of hype, that this is the oldest path, the truest, most profound anything, that's hype. So you're selling, it's a sales pitch. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but let your wisdom and your heart work for you. And if you can do that, then that's a better way, it would seem. See, then it's just, oh, listen, don't believe me, but believe me. You can't believe me, really, but I'm asking you to believe me. Believe this. This is the oldest, best, highest tradition. Not that the person has a clue as to what the highest tradition is, right? You want them to believe you, but they can't believe you. They're not ready to believe anything like that. So, but if they're fearful and if they're in a certain state of karma where they don't have a choice, or they don't have much of a choice, then they go with that and they hope for the best. Whatever it is, Christian or other teaching, they hope for the best. Hope that there's some kindness and basic goodness there for the peeps, or heartfulness, generosity as they call it, that reaches in and says, hey, yeah, you don't belong here. So you don't belong here, you belong in that group. So, how many times will you see that? Instead when you say, no, you're in this group, you stay here. What are you doing? Talking, you feel more connected to that group. Oh, you're garbage. Get out of here. Get out of here, you puke. Right? You must be inferior or demented. So you can't be right, because this is heaven. Says who? For who? Everybody? Don't think so. Shouldn't go that far. Next question.
What happens to a tradition whose management falls into the wrong hands?
Well, what do you think happens to it? You already have the answer right there. You have a question that is answered.
I'm wondering, can it survive a situation like that? Can it actually be strengthened by a situation like that?
Of course it could be. I mean, we're talking about humans. The situation isn't other than a human. Can a human be straightened by a shock, a punch in the nose? Absolutely. Let it rip. Boom! Wake up! It's time to wake up and stop the nonsense. See? So, yes, we're talking about humans. Tradition is abstract. It's a human, right? In what position, in what tradition? It's just a human. So it's important for the human to correct itself, to get straight, get clear, get real, be true. So that whether you're in a tradition or not, which is what the tradition should be telling you, say, hey, if you're true already and you know what true is, doesn't matter if you're in our club or not. Doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left, or in the middle, or neither. You're nowhere. Doesn't matter if you're nowhere. If you understand, then you're okay. So be it. Let it be that. Question.
When do traditions cross the line?
When they're not mindful or aware, responsible enough to know how they could be harming peeps. indulging them in the business of spirituality or the materialism of spirituality with no real regard for how that person is doing or what they are being or what they may be plagued by. So not too many teachers are psychic. So that's an issue. They're so mental, intellectual. Some might even frown upon the psychic as if it's some kind of inferior something or other. And hey, by whatever means necessary, know your enemies and the bad spirits, by whatever means necessary. What do you mean the psychic? No, the psychic is as valuable as the physical, as anything else, properly used. Properly used. People say, oh, well, voodoo. Well, if that's their method, maybe that can help somebody. See? If it's another system of divination, fine. It's not the system of divination that's the problem, but who's using it? Who's using it can make or break it in terms of its function, sacred use. See? So that's really the issue. Sacred use of something, whether it's music or art or teaching, writing, philosophy, medicine, right? It's not the thing itself, but who's using it and where they're coming from in terms of their heart realization, if any. See? Next question.
What distinguishes between a cult and a tradition?
There is no difference. Now there's a connotation relative to cults. There's a dark thing and you're going to be, herded into a corral and chained together, put on buses, sent into a cave, and slaughtered. See? That's not happening, right? That's some kind of hocus pocus. Every organization is a cult of some sort or other. That means it's an educational culturing process. Not a negative cult, not a religious cult necessarily, not a devil's cult, but you can have artistic cults that are just as prejudicial and dogmatic as anything else out there. So you can have a business cult that is just totally full of crap, right? You can have any group of peeps can have agreement and thus have this cult. And someone may lead it, someone may not. Depends, right? There are esoteric societies out there that are definitely cults, but by that I mean they're educational systems that could be useful and not, depending, of course, on who the person is that's using it, for what purpose. See? To expand the heart and intelligence, or to close the mind and increase the fear. See? Isolation in a negative sense. So, military cult, right? Coca-Cola cult, TV cults, right? TV show, right? All your favorite TV show, cults, right? Musicians, cults, right? Followers of any sort, cults. So it's wide. Educational cults, of course, political cults, no doubt about that. Government cults, subcults in the government, right? More extreme right-wing, left-wing cults, right? With leaders, with testaments, with constitutions, sub-constitutions, right? Ideas, pamphlet, political agendas, all of that. It's human nature to be cultic. Family cult, mommy and daddy cult, right? Candy store, grocery store cults. My favorite candy store. My favorite, right? Grocery store. My favorite dentist. He's the man. So on, right? My favorite fish market, right? Or butcher. My favorite car mechanic. This guy is like the bomb, right? Had a great following. Volvo specialist. So it's humorous, absurd, but that's the nature of the human. It's to be stupid, absurd, extreme, crazy, offbeat, off the wall, beside the point. Okay? And that's what real culturing, if we're going to call it that, a real cult of reality, right? Cult of heart fire sound, right? Say, hey, stop, man, chill out. You got to get your wits about you and slow down for sure. So you start to perceive properly. No one's going to tell you what to perceive, just stop and start perceiving, right? We're going to tell you what to perceive. We say, well, there's something out there we see, but we can't tell you what to perceive. Just slow down enough so that you can actually start perceiving. And that means to get beyond the programmings that appearing to perceive what you think you're perceiving, but you may not actually be perceiving that 100%, or there may be more that you perceive that you're not aware of, but then once you stop, look and listen, you might become aware of what you're actually perceiving. That can make a difference in your case relative to your life moving along a certain spiritual or creative or sacred path, a sacred spiritual direction for you. It's not sacred for someone else. You're the individual. That means, in this case, according to a certain standard perhaps, or view, that yeah, you let go of materialism and embrace the light. Although that's a strange idea for peeps. Embrace the light. Is it a blue light, green light? Maybe it's a clear light. But it may include all the lights. Same thing, because everyone's different. Maybe all you can see is a green light, a purple light, a yellow light. Everyone is designed to see different lights because of their vibrations. So it's not a problem if you don't see the yellow light, or you don't see the red light, or you don't see the blue light. It's not a problem. What light do you see, if any? So, well, I see a white light. Okay, go with the white light then. And work with that. Then where does it take you? Then you work from what the phenomena is and what the results are. And see if the person's on the path or somewhere else, off the path. So, according to what system then? Next question.
Are traditions better served by maintaining a certain level of purity or by opening to new influences?
Obviously, the creative approach is the best approach under all conditions for all peeps. Obviously, creative approach. Not extreme, but creative. That means being open to change when it seems that it's necessary to change. See? Necessary to keep up with the times. Necessary to keep up with a new level of consciousness. So creative approach, being open to possibility, is the wisest approach, regardless of whether or not you have a cult, you have a tradition, you have a family, you have a business.
What leads to the death of a tradition?
Is this like saying, why do peeps die? Why do people die? They burn out. Traditions burn out. Right? They just cave in. They burn out. Right? They self-destruct in some cases. Some live on. Okay? But whether one lives or dies is irrelevant, because individuals are here to do what they have to do. So it's not about a tradition then, it's about the individual. Who is a tradition? Who is its own tradition? Who is its own universe? Its own realization? See? Its own fulfillment? Its own perfection? And to the degree that you realize your own perfection, I don't mean in terms of stupid karma and neurosis programs, that's not perfection. So to misunderstand that, to think that that's what your own perfection is, how well you masturbate or to what degree you want to masturbate, who or what, under what conditions, is not your own perfection, that's your own neurosis. Perfection beyond neurosis, yes, that's what you are. You're a perfectly neurotic being, it's good to accept that, and then go beyond that and see what else you can be. That's your perfection. It's your potential. It's part of your perfection. Not what you've done, not your past, not what you've experienced, but what more there is. The what else there is. Say the plus element. There. Can you go beyond that? Can you let go of that? And go beyond that? What you can let go of to the infinite and go beyond, maybe more closer to what is necessary in terms of real purificational process.
What happens to the individual who becomes addicted to their tradition?
An addict is an addict. Doesn't matter if it's a tradition, it doesn't matter if it's a function, biologic function. So that it's a fixation. And it's a matter of whether or not that fixation or that addiction is helping you. Right? You could be addicted to wisdom books like you might be. Right? Right? That might be good for a while. So it's better to be addicted to wisdom books than comic books. For some it's better to be addicted to comic books. Right? So again, for who? Under what circumstances? For what? So you might be addicted to a guru thing, or others addicted to Buddhism, right? Some here the Hinduism, right? The musical side of, right? The spiritual trip or game or process, whatever you want to see it as. Sound side, the musical side, right? Extreme musical. So yeah, it's addiction, maybe necessary. That is a distraction up to a point. So no, I got to feed off of this. Good. Addiction and then appropriate practice may be the same thing at a certain point. The idea is to keep the open mind, so the mind open, so you're able to know if your addiction is really fulfilling a requirement, a need for growth, right? Say, no, this is a fixation now. I need to fix and focus on this. I need to focus, right? Some would say, oh, you're addicted to that. But this is my focus. So can't get lost in words now. Depends on whether or not you have a focus and a purpose that you need to be attentive to and on point with. Say, yeah, no, he's addicted to his trip. Could be perfect. Maybe that's the only way you're going to get anywhere. So be addicted to what your purpose and mission is. But then it's not addicted, then you're just being there. It's not an addiction. So it's not like a neurosis that is a problem. If it's your nature, perfect. That's what you're doing. But open-mindedly so you can get beyond it when the time comes to recognize that it's done. And it needs to change gears. That's the difference. See, it's intelligent, that's creative. Change gears. Upgrade it or maybe downgrade it. Know when to change gears if you have to change gears. Open-mindedness, the creative intelligence at work. Next question.
It seems like there's a fine line between staying focused within a tradition and losing sight of other possibilities outside that tradition.
There may be. So, but we're not dictating anything here. There's not one dogma over another dogma. One is not better than the other. It depends on the individual. Because really, who knows? Ultimately, that's the name of the series. The purpose is to bring to the table the concept of who knows. That means, are you willing to take a profound look at it? Not just in a superficial glance at it, right? A mere glimpse is not enough. Are you able to take a real profound, penetrating look at what it is so that you can determine whether or not you should be or hearing it? Can you really afford to hear it? Can you tolerate hearing it at a deeper level than you're used to? Can you listen more deeply into what it is? All of this is part of this process. Going beyond, clinging and slowing down and stopping yourself. Saying, yeah, maybe you do have to monitor your movement. Maybe you do have to moderate yourself a little bit here and there. But the idea is understand that what we're talking about is continual adaptation while being in the moment relative to your karma, which is a whole different phenomena from your consciousness. You can have your consciousness with your body or your consciousness related to the universe by itself and your body or without your body. So it's consciousness with body, consciousness without body. So consciousness with reference, consciousness without reference.
How does one keep one's native wisdom intact as they learn and develop the wisdom of the tradition they're in?
That might be your tradition. That is your tradition. Native, that is your tradition. The idea, of course, is if that's all you have, that's all you have. If you have a basic sensitivity and different kind of sensibility about who you are and what you need to do, where you need to go, regardless of your tradition or your culture, then fine, you do what you have to do. No one can dictate that to you or tell you, what to do with that. You have to be intelligent. And you have to determine, as an individual, are you being intelligent enough? Are you being square with what it is? Being straight with it? Are you being sharp enough about what it is you're doing? Whatever that is, relationship, non-relationship, right? A group experience or not group experience, teacher or not a teacher, right? Family or not a family, work or not a work. You have to be able to be sharp about what it is that you feel you need, right? And be open beyond that. See, to what else might be added to make it easier for you, not harder for you. See, instead of what is happening ordinarily is that people, because of their social disposition or their preoccupation with other, become too open and too vulnerable to these other flows that they don't even recognize that they're taking on karma from, that is slowing them down and making it impossible for them to find any momentum to speak of. Because they're so caught up in everyone else's stuff, they don't know where they begin or end as individuals. So it's like they don't know what they put in their own body. They don't know what to eat for themselves. They don't know what to think for themselves. They don't know how to sleep for themselves. They don't know how to breathe for themselves. So they don't know how to live for themselves. And so when you're in this mishmash of peeps, in terms of a certain kind of institutional programming, you have to be careful because you might get lost in the mix. And some have to get lost in the mix because without the mix they feel they can't survive. They only know life in terms of the mix. So they never come to terms with what it really is that they are, beyond the mix. And if somebody says, well, the mix is your realization, you say, no, it's nonsense. You are the realization. Your awareness is the realization, whether you have a particular mix or not, relative to anything or everything out there. Universe, chemical realization, atomic realization, galaxial realization, whatever it might be. What level is the mix for you? Huh?
What happens with traditions that are brought to new cultures?
What do you think?
Well,
I mean, that's your question, right? Right? What happens?
some change the new culture, some are changed by the new culture, some both, some perhaps neither.
Some of it works, some of it may not work. If you're talking about Eastern traditions in America, some of it works, some of it doesn't work. And that's because, well, the tradition could be perfect, whatever it might be. Could be a gardening tradition, could be a horse tradition, right? A horse training tradition, right? From some superior country, right? In Europe or something, right? Well, horsemanship is a big deal, perhaps. Maybe it's a bigger deal somewhere else, unknown. In any case, depends on what's going on here, whether or not people are in resonance with that or feel they need that, whether people are spiritually evolved enough to be able to pick up on something, whether or not they're smart enough to know that they're suffering, to be able to use something in a certain way. But that's not just about Eastern, because we are all here bringing in influences, see, from our ancestry. So it's not just about from the East or from the South or from the North, from the West. So we're bringing in influences from the galaxy, not just from the Earth. Because the galaxy is impacting us now. All the galaxies together. See, we are part of this continuum of energies, cosmic energies, that are having an impact on you. And so you have to think outside of traditions, as well as from the fact of perception that you are part of the galaxy, that your being is galaxial in nature or universal. See, at heart you are universe. But for the most part that's not your practice. Your practice is a self that's surviving, learning, suffering, making it work for you day by day. See? But then you go deeper and deeper and you say, no, you are the universe. See? You are the reality, you are the heart itself. But at what level? That's why practice is important. That's why having fair-minded associates relative to your spirituality in terms of creative intelligence is very important. So that all options are left open to the individual. So, oh yes, you can do that. And do that because of this. See? Because this is about growth. It's about you recovering your intelligence in terms of a cosmic sense of who you are, not just a personal sense of who you are. It's an impersonal sense that here might be the more sacred, with all due respect to the personal. But the personal then is an assumed egoic structure of limitations that is not true to your spiritual nature. And that's something that a person has to prove to themselves, whether or not they're able to see that they are suffering this, they are discomforted by this, they are emotional about this, they are neurotic about this, they're very mentally disturbed about this, and they have crazy patterns of behavior concerning this. And so if they can be up front about that, then they might say, oh yes, I think I need to change that a little bit. So they start opening beyond the limitations of the programs that you inherited. That could be river of blood programs or socially conditioned programs, right? And then you start to modify your behavior according to what your new image is or what your growing ideal is of what it is that you can be apart from your suffering nature or your suffering self. So what about your non-suffering? What about your joyous self? So we have to have a creative approach to it. Otherwise, whether you're in a tradition or not, you're going to just be comfortable with whatever box shows up for you.
What about traditions that engage in proselytizing strictly as a numbers game, or primarily as a numbers game?
No, that's just business. That's materialism. What about it? Just business. It's just business. Numbers, business, materialism. So it's just about that, materialism, making sure they meet their quotas and they have so many peeps. That's materialism. And then you try to manipulate that and say, no, this is a spiritual thing, which it could be too. It could be both, right? It could be a very intense recognition that you need so many peeps to do a certain kind of work for the sake of all peeps. Could be a good humanitarian effort. No problem with that. You have to determine what's good, what's noble, what's dignified, or in this case, the word that's floating around is what's enlightened. What's the enlightened thing to do? What's the, from the Huda realization, what's the ensoundment thing to do? So, what's the sound that enables you to feel, or vibratory rate, or presence that enables you to feel complete, full, perfect? Great. May the blessings be. Hugh.